Hey, welcome to Imagine BL Story. If you're new here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. It really encourages my work and helps me bring you more stories. Now sit back, relax, and enjoy today's story.
Message sent. I dropped my phone onto the desk, leaned back in my chair, and let out a long, shaky sigh. Finally, I muttered, grinning at the ceiling. You did it, Jamie. You actually confessed. For 2 months, I've been crushing hard on Alex from design. His crooked smile, the way he always rolled up his sleeves during meetings like we were about to start a heist instead of a presentation. He flirted back sometimes, little emojis, late-night chats about everything and nothing. So yeah, maybe this text wasn't totally out of nowhere. I sat there, basking in my newfound bravery, nibbling absently at my thumbnail like a nervous hamster. He's gonna love that, I whispered to myself. He's probably smiling right now. Maybe even... Ping. My eyes flicked to the screen, expecting a reply. Instead, what I saw made my stomach nosedive straight into the Mariana Trench. To Ethan Hawthorne. Message, I can't stop thinking about you. The way you talk, the way you look at me with eyes that could make code compile itself. God, it's driving me insane. I think I'm stupidly into you. Want to go out with me? I froze, had to reread it 3 times, hoping the universe would undo it through sheer disbelief. But the words didn't vanish. Neither did the name at the top. Ethan Hawthorne. My message to my crush was just delivered to my boss. I lurched forward, clutching my phone like it might explode. Oh my God. No, undo, unsend, recall, delete, self-destruct. Everything okay over there? Maya's voice drifted from the next desk. Yeah, I squeaked. Totally fine. Just sending top secret code to the wrong server. She gave me a look. What? Dude, you make no sense. And why do you look like you just saw a ghost? Yeah, well, I muttered under my breath. The ghost of unemployment. My pulse thundered in my ears. Then it got worse. Infinitely worse when the gray checkmark turned blue. Red. Oh God. My voice cracked. He read it. He read it. I slumped back in my chair, staring at my screen in pure horror as 3 dots appeared beneath the message. He was typing. Oh no. Oh please no. Don't reply. Or do reply. Just say something normal. I whispered to my phone like it was a bomb I could defuse with charm. The dots disappeared, then reappeared, then disappeared again. Each cycle shaved 10 years off my life. Finally, nothing. Silence. The read icon mocked me from the screen like a glowing badge of doom. I pressed my palms to my face, muffling a groan. I'm so fired. I'm not just fired. I'm memed. My career's going to be a cautionary tale on LinkedIn. Maya leaned over the partition again. Seriously, what happened? Nothing. I said too fast. Absolutely nothing. Just, life-ending humiliation and emotional combustion. I peeked at my screen again, half hoping it had all been a nightmare. Nope. Still there. Still read. Still no reply. And the worst part? I could already see Ethan's expression in my head. Cool, unreadable, the kind of man who never blinked even during layoffs and cufflinks, even on casual Fridays. And now, he might be thinking I was apparently in love with him. Just perfect. Somewhere across the office, the elevator dinged. My stomach flipped. Ethan Hawthorne had arrived. He stepped out, crisp as ever, black coat, black mood, probably black coffee in his veins. I swear he didn't walk, he glided. The man had the energy of a silent storm. And I, idiot of the century, had just sent him a message declaring my undying love. He passed through the office with that quiet authority that made everyone pretend to look productive. My heart banged around my ribcage like it was trying to file for emergency evacuation. Don't look. Don't make eye contact. If he doesn't look at you, maybe it didn't happen. Maybe it's fine. Maybe he deleted it. Maybe he thinks it's spam. Maybe you'll wake up and this'll all be, Just then he looked right at me. A brief glance. Eyes sharp enough to skin my soul. I immediately dropped my gaze to my monitor as he walked straight past me without saying a word. Oh God. He definitely saw it. Yup, I am definitely getting fired. Might as well start writing my resignation letter. The rest of my morning was a blur of fake productivity. I resized buttons that didn't need resizing. I adjusted the padding by 1 pixel because, yes, that's the kind of detail that keeps a man from crying. Every email ping made my spine jolt. Every Slack notification sounded like a firing squad. Nothing from Ethan. At lunch, I barely tasted my sandwich before Maya plopped into the chair across from me. Okay, you're vibrating. Spill. Did you finally text Alex? I stared down at my sandwich like it could save me. Define text. She narrowed her eyes. Oh my God. What did you do? Something catastrophic. Before she could respond, a voice cut through the chatter. Deep calm, too familiar. Jamie, could you drop by my office after lunch? I froze mid-bite. Maya froze too, eyes wide as saucers. Ethan was standing by the doorway, unreadable expression, hands in his pockets like he hadn't just detonated my will to live. Sure, I croaked. Of course, sir. After lunch. Totally. I didn't taste another bite after that. By the time I stood outside his office, my palms were sweating so badly my phone almost slipped out of my hand. The door was slightly ajar. I knocked anyway. Come in. Ethan's office was a cathedral of composure. Dark wood, cold air, one single immaculate plant that looked more confident than me. He didn't look up at first. Sit. I sat, stiffly, like someone expecting a live firing squad. Finally, he set his tablet down and met my eyes. I think I received a message from you this morning. If embarrassment could kill, my obituary would have already been printed. Right? I managed. About that. It was, meant for someone else. He tilted his head, gaze unreadable. I suspected. Good. Great. So we can just forget it, right? Like erase it from existence, throw it into the sun. He interrupted quietly. It was quite direct. I wanted the floor to open up and swallow me whole. I'm so sorry. It was personal. Completely unprofessional. It won't happen again. He leaned back, the faintest curve of a smile tugging at his mouth. Relax, Jamie. You're not in trouble. My brain short-circuited. I'm not. Not unless confessing your feelings violates company policy, he said lightly. In which case, we may have to rewrite the handbook. That teasing glint in his eyes made it worse. Better, I didn't even know anymore. Right, I said, words tumbling over themselves. So all forgotten. Wiped. Poof. Deleted from the collective memory. He chuckled, a low, rich sound I'd never heard from him before. Good. Carry on, then. When I stumbled out of his office, my heart was racing, but not from terror anymore. There'd been something in his expression right before I left, something softer. Curiosity. I showed up way too early the next morning, partly to get a head start, mostly to avoid seeing him. But of course, the universe has a sense of humor. Ethan was already there. His office light spilled across the hallway like some kind of cinematic warning. He was by the window, coffee in hand, tablet in the other, looking like he'd been born and knowing how to make mornings look good. I froze mid-step, trying to decide if I could ninja my way past without him noticing. No such luck. He turned, caught my reflection in the glass. Morning, Jamie. Just like that. Calm, steady, the voice of a man who absolutely doesn't know you sent him a hard-eyed confession by mistake. I muttered something about coffee and practically speed-walked to the kitchen. My heart was doing its own cardio session, and I hadn't even had caffeine yet. The dumb thing was, I used to have a crush on him. A full-blown, no-chance-in-hell crush that I neatly shoved into a box labeled never going to happen. Ethan Hawthorne, my boss. Brilliant, composed, occasionally smiles like he means it. Completely unattainable. So I'd redirected that energy toward Alex for marketing. Friendly, flirty, safe. At least it was safe. Until last night's text decided to self-destruct my life by landing in the wrong inbox. Every time Ethan walked by, my lungs seemed to forget what they were for. What had started as embarrassment over one wrong message had become something stranger, quieter, more dangerous. Days passed, and we slipped into a rhythm that looked normal from the outside. Meetings, client calls, project revisions. But underneath the surface, everything was different. At first, he kept it professional, his tone measured, his instructions clear, but there was always a flicker in his gaze that didn't belong in boardrooms. Sometimes he'd ask for my input on things he could have easily handled himself, or lean in a little too close when pointing at the screen. He'd make small comments that didn't sound like much until I thought about them later. I told myself it was just my imagination. Still, the space between us started to hum. In meetings, when he sat beside me instead of across, our knees would brush under the table, subtle and deliberate, and the world would shrink to that one point of contact. When he complimented my work, I told myself it was nothing. But his voice always softened when he said my name. By Friday, the awkward panic had settled into something quieter, almost familiar. We'd found a strange balance, pretending the message never happened while moving around each other like we both knew it had. He kept finding reasons to stop by my desk or ask for a quick opinion, even if it was something he already knew the answer to. And I kept saying yes. Some moments felt almost easy. Once during a review, he laughed, really laughed, at one of my dumb jokes about a client's potato-shaped logo. The sound startled me. I'd never heard him laugh like that before. It was warm, unguarded, human. He told me I was funny, Said it so simply that I almost missed how rare it was. After that, something shifted. That evening, in the break room, he mentioned adding me to the next big client presentation. "You're the reason they're still with us," he'd said, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. It shouldn't have meant as much as it did, but it did. He smiled when I tried to thank him, told me just to keep doing what I was doing. Then, almost offhand, he teased me about avoiding more accidental confessions. I laughed in my coffee to hide the way my pulse spiked. By the end of the week, the whole office had gone for drinks at the Loop. I hadn't planned to stay long, but one drink turned into two, and then he arrived, later than the rest, sleeves rolled, hair slightly out of place. He looked more like a person than the man who ran our world. Every time I glanced up, he was watching me from across the table, smiling like there was a secret only we shared. When the night thinned and the rain started outside, we ended up leaving together. The cab ride was quiet, the kind that felt full even without words. He told me I didn't need to be careful around him, that it was okay to be normal again. I nodded, said sure, though neither of us seemed to know what normal meant anymore. When we stopped in front of my building, our eyes met in the half-light, and something in that silence made it very clear that normal wasn't coming back. The next morning, I kept a promise I half regretted. I met Alex at the climbing gym. He'd been easy company these past few months, steady where everything else had been uncertain. We climbed, joked, caught up like old friends. And then, halfway through, I heard Ethan's voice. He wasn't supposed to be there. No suit, no pretense, just a dark t-shirt and that quiet confidence that always made the air feel different. He said he used to climb, that he wanted to see if he still could. Alex thought we'd planned it. I knew we hadn't. He watched me more than he climbed, stepping in once to fix my harness when the strap twisted. His fingers brushed mine, steady, unhurried. "You're better than you think," he murmured. When I joked about flattery from my boss, he said softly, "Then don't call me boss. Not outside work." The word stuck with me long after he'd walked away. Later, Alex asked if I want to grab dinner, his voice easy, familiar. A few weeks ago, I would have said yes without thinking. But the answer came slower this time. Something about a rain check, maybe next week. He didn't push, just smiled. And I realized the flutter I used to feel around him was gone, replaced by something heavier, quieter, with Ethan's name written all over it. That night, my phone buzzed. "Ethan, you climbed well today. Didn't know you had that kind of balance." I stared at the message longer than I should have before replying. "Me, guess I had good guidance." He replied once more. "Ethan, we make a good team. Sweet dreams, Jamie." The screen dimmed, but the warmth it left behind didn't. For the first time, I didn't fight it. I just let it stay. By Sunday afternoon, I was supposed to be doing groceries. Instead, I found myself sitting across from Ethan in a quiet corner cafe that smelled like cinnamon and rain. He'd called it a break, but it felt more like a pause between breaths, one of those rare moments when the world seemed to move slower just for the two of us. The rain outside softened everything, the kind of steady rhythm that made conversation come easier. We talked about nothing that mattered, the state of office coffee, a bad playlist, the chaos of deadlines, and yet it all felt strangely significant. He was relaxed here, away from the sharp edges of boardrooms and client calls, stirring his coffee like he had nowhere else to be, somewhere between the second refill and a quiet stretch of shared silence. He set his cup down. "So, that text." I groaned. "Are we really doing this?" "Only because I never asked," he said, eyes glinting. "Who was it meant for?" "Just someone from work." I said, tracing my mug. "Doesn't matter now." "Doesn't matter," he echoed softly. "That sounds like it still does. Maybe I'm just trying not to die of embarrassment. You told your boss he had eyes that could make code compile itself. Jamie, I think we passed embarrassment a long time ago." I dropped my face into my hands. "You remember the line?" "It was flattering," he said, grinning. "Dramatic, but flattering." I looked up, and for once he wasn't teasing. "Whoever it was," he said, "they're lucky to have someone see them that way." Something unspoken settled between us. I wanted to change the subject, so I asked the first thing that came to mind. "You mentioned an ex once. Was it recent?" His expression flickered, softer. "A year ago. We were married for 8. He looked down at his coffee. "I was gone most of the time, projects, travel. You tell yourself it's temporary, until one day you realize the distance stuck." I hesitated. "That sounds rough." "It was," he said quietly. "But sometimes losing something reminds you what kind of person you want to be next." That hit deeper than I expected. I didn't know what to say, so I just nodded. The rain outside grew heavier, drumming against the window. "You ever notice how quiet the city gets when it rains?" he said. "Yeah," I said. "Like everyone's forced to slow down." He looked at me then, really looked. Sometimes that's when you notice what you've been missing. He wasn't talking about the weather anymore. When we finally left, he held his umbrella over both of us. For what it's worth, he said softly, I'm glad you sent that message, even if it wasn't meant for me. Before I could answer, he gave a faint smile and stepped into a cab, leaving me standing in the drizzle, heart thudding, coffee on my sleeve, an impossible feeling that I just crossed a line I couldn't uncross. By the next week, when we traveled for the client pitch, the rhythm between us had shifted into something quiet but undeniable. On the flight back, conversation came easily, laughter softer now, like we both knew what was sitting just beneath the surface but chose not to name it. Every glance lasted a little too long. Every pause felt intentional. By the time the cab pulled up to my building, heavy rain had started and it looked like the storm was raging in. Before I could think twice, I heard myself say, come up, just until it slows. He hesitated, the smallest flicker, and then that quiet, knowing smile appeared. The kind that always felt like he was 2 steps ahead of whatever I thought I was hiding. When we got to my apartment, I handed him a towel, apologizing for the mess, dying plants, half-folded laundry, evidence of a life in progress. He only laughed, the sound low and easy, saying it suited me, a little chaotic but honest. After we had just settled on the couch with mugs of tea, the light from a muted movie washed the room in soft color. Outside, the rain pressed steadily against the windows, filling the spaces our words didn't. After a while, Ethan said quietly, you know, you'd be different outside the office. Different how? More open, less afraid to take up space. Maybe that's because you're not my boss when you're sitting on my couch, I said. He smirked. Maybe. The air between us shifted again, delicate but deliberate. His gaze softened. So, he said lightly, was it Alex? I blinked. What? The message, he said, leaning back. Was the mystery crush Alex? I groaned. You really don't let things go, do you? Just curious, he said, eyes flicking toward me. Because lately it feels like whoever it was doesn't matter anymore. It was teasing, but not really. My pulse stuttered. You sound awfully confident for someone who was supposed to be drying off and leaving. He held my gaze. Should I go? The question hung there, soft but charged. I should have said yes. Instead, I said no. Stay. Just a little longer. He smiled then, slow and deliberate. Okay. The movie kept playing, but neither of us was watching. His hand brushed mine, light and searching. I turned toward him, and the space between us collapsed into something inevitable. I need to know something, I whispered. He tilted his head, voice barely above the sound of rain. What's that? If I'm imagining this. You're not, he said simply. That was all it took. I leaned in first. The kiss was slow at first, careful, almost questioning, but it deepened naturally, like something that had been waiting just beneath the surface. His hand came up to my jaw, steady and warm, and the world outside the window blurred into light and rain. When we finally pulled apart, neither of us spoke. But the silence wasn't awkward anymore. It was alive, humming between us. The next morning, I woke up to the smell of coffee and the quiet hum of rain outside. For a second, I thought I was dreaming, until I saw Ethan standing in my kitchen, sleeves rolled, still in yesterday's shirt. My heart dropped straight into my stomach. Right? I slept with my boss last night. Morning, he said, turning with 2 mugs. His voice was gentle, careful. Hey, I replied, rubbing at my eyes. You made coffee? Sort of, he said with a faint smile. Didn't find filters, so I improvised. Brave of you, I muttered, taking the mug from his hand. Our fingers brushed, and it was ridiculous how that tiny touch felt bigger than everything else. We stood there in the small kitchen, the air too still. He looked out the window for a long time before speaking again. So, about last night, I winced. Yeah, that. He hesitated. I don't regret it, but maybe we keep this between us. Just for now. There was no edge to his tone, just quiet reason. Still, it felt like something fragile was cracking. Right? I said, pretending to sound fine. Makes sense. His eyes softened. It's not because I don't want this, he added quickly. Work's just complicated. I get it. I lied, even though I didn't. He left soon after. When the door closed, I stood there holding my mug, trying to decide whether last night had been a mistake or the best thing I'd ever done. At work, pretending was harder than I'd imagined. Ethan had gone back to being the version everyone else saw. Professional, distant, unreadable. No glances, no smiles, just polite detachment. It was like that night had been quietly erased, and I was the only one still carrying it around. Maybe it had been a lapse, something he regretted as soon as it happened. Maybe it had only meant something to me. But knowing that didn't make it easier to sit through meetings, pretending I didn't notice how carefully he avoided my eyes. Alex tried to pull me back into normal, donuts, after-work plans, easy laughter I couldn't quite return. I said yes to things I didn't mean, hoping distraction would help, but my thoughts always circled back to Ethan. By midweek, the silence between us felt heavier than any words could fix. I told myself to let it go, to move on. Instead, when the office emptied that Wednesday, I found myself standing outside his door, report in hand, pretending it was just work. But when I stepped inside and he looked up, calm and unsurprised, I realized he'd probably been expecting me all along. "You're still here," he said softly. "Deadline," I murmured, setting the folder down. "Couldn't sleep until it's done." He nodded, flipping through the pages. "You've done great work on this." "Thanks," I said. "You could have told me that in an email." Something shifted in his face, small but visible. "Jamie, it's not easy, you know." "What isn't?" "Keeping this separate. You think I don't want to talk to you?" "I think you're doing a great job of pretending last night never happened," I said, my voice low. He exhaled, tired. "I'm trying to protect you." "Feels like you're just protecting yourself." The room went still. He set the report down, stepped closer until I could feel his breath. "You don't owe me anything," he said quietly. "I know," I said, "but that doesn't mean I don't care." Neither of us spoke after that. The silence felt too full, too raw. I turned before I could change my mind and walked out. The sound of the door clicking shut louder than it should have been. On the subway home, the city smeared past in lights and rain. My phone buzzed once. "Ethan, I didn't mean it like that." I stared at the message until the screen dimmed. Then I locked the phone and shoved it in my pocket because for once, I didn't trust myself to reply. The days after that blurred into work and silence. Whatever I'd said in his office hadn't fixed anything, just left the air between us sharper, more careful. By the time Thursday arrived, the presentation I had been working on had swallowed everything else. 2 weeks of revisions and sleepless nights condensed into 1 hour of pretending I wasn't coming apart. When it was over, the room filled with polite applause and half-meant congratulations. I stood there, dazed, trying to remember how to breathe, until I saw Ethan at the back of the room, hands in his pockets, watching me like the noise around us didn't exist. "Nice work," he said quietly, his voice softer than it had any right to be. "Thanks," I managed. "Didn't think you'd come." "Wouldn't have missed it," he said. Then, after a beat, "You were brilliant, Jamie." The words caught me off guard, heavier than a compliment should be. He looked at me like he meant it, like he'd been waiting for a reason to say it. "Walk with me?" he asked. We ended up in the narrow hallway by the server room, all hum and fluorescent light. It felt like the world had shrunk to the space between us. "You've been avoiding me," he said. "I thought that's what you wanted." "I wanted time to think," he admitted. "Didn't help much, though." He stepped closer. I caught the faint smell of rain on his jacket, that same mix of distance and warmth that always undid me. "I am so sorry. I was a jerk to you. I shouldn't have acted like that night meant nothing to me," he said softly before adding, "I just miss you." I let out a shaky breath. "You pushed me away, Ethan." "I know," he said, "and I hate that I did. You matter more than I planned for." His hand brushed a stray hair from my forehead, slow and deliberate, like he was asking permission. I leaned in before I could think. The kiss was deep and steady, dissolving weeks of silence in one breath. He tasted like coffee and rain, familiar and new all at once. When we finally broke apart, our foreheads stayed pressed together. Both of us were smiling, the kind of smile you give when you already know it's too late to turn back. "This is insane," I whispered. "Probably," he said, voice low, "but I'm done pretending I don't want this." His fingers traced my wrist, gentle but certain. I caught his hand, held it. "Then don't." He hesitated for a breath, eyes flicking to my mouth before he caught himself. That small, nervous restraint did something to me. I reached up, fingers grazing his collar, and that was all it took. He closed the distance. The kiss started carefully, almost unsure, but it deepened like it had been waiting just beneath the surface. I don't remember how we got home from there. Only thing I could remember was me being pressed to the wall of my apartment with his lips never leaving mine. There was a quiet urgency in the way we found each other again. Another kiss, slower this time, more certain. We stumbled back, half laughing, hands clumsy in their need to keep contact, his fingers tracing down my arm, mine curling into his shirt. The air between us thickened with warmth and heartbeat and the quiet ache of finally giving in. And when he pressed his forehead to mine, our breaths caught in the same rhythm. No words, no explanations, just that slow, steady pull that said everything else could wait. The rest blurred gently, the room dissolving into soft edges and warmth. When morning came, Ethan lay beside me, still half asleep, the sheets a quiet mess between us. For the first time, he didn't look like my boss. No suit, no composure, just a man who'd stayed. When he stirred, a lazy smile found its way across his face. His voice, rough with sleep, broke the stillness, something low and easy that made my chest tighten. He brushed his thumb along my jaw, checking without asking, making sure I was still there, still okay. And I was. More than I expected to be. The world outside could have been burning, and I wouldn't have noticed. He sat up, sheets slipping around him, sunlight catching the edge of his smile. Good, because I'm not pretending this didn't happen. That pulled me fully awake. You're serious? Very. We'll stay professional at work, he said, but outside it, I want to see where this goes. No rules this time. Something in me unclenched, a quiet, steady relief I hadn't realized I was holding. You're sure? I asked. He smiled, certain now. Jamie, I've never been more sure of anything. He leaned in, kissing me once, then again, slower this time, unhurried, like we had nowhere else to be. When he finally pulled back, he grinned. Still can't believe it all started with a text. Wrong text, I said. Right outcome. I laughed, shaking my head. Guess the universe just needed to reroute me. Guess it did, he murmured, brushing his lips against mine again. Softer, lingering, a promise disguised as a kiss. To me, he pulled me close, and the world outside the window melted into quiet light. We went back to work the following week, keeping our distance where it mattered, careful, composed, but the air between us carried a new ease, a quiet understanding that pulsed beneath the routine. When I passed his office that afternoon, he looked up from his computer and caught my gaze. For a heartbeat, everything else fell away. Then he gave a barely noticeable wink and returned to typing, and I couldn't help the quiet thrill that came with knowing I was dating my boss. Later that week, Alex stopped by my desk, waving a signed transfer letter and talking about Toronto like it was a clean slate waiting for him. There was no heaviness in our goodbye, only warmth and a quiet understanding that whatever we'd been had run its course. I wished him well, and meant it. When he left, I sat for a while, watching the cursor blink on my monitor, thinking about all the accidents that had led me here. The wrong message, the impossible timing, the man I was never supposed to fall for. And yet, somehow, everything had found its place. Just before I shut down my computer, a new message appeared at the corner of my screen. Ethan, coffee after work? My treat. I didn't even have to think before replying. Me always. And for once, the future didn't feel uncertain. It just felt right.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed the story, tell us your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to subscribe and click the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Until next time, keep daydreaming in BL.